What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? Hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, hey, you. How are you doing? What's up, everybody? This is Sunko. Today is September 20th, Monday in Korea. Thanksgiving Day in Korea. And what I'm going to show you tonight is 곱창김. 곱창김. This 곱창김 tonight. The dried seaweed, or what can I say, seasoned seaweed. It's often raw to wrap and be eaten with rice, and it's extremely versatile and can be used in many dishes. I mean, it can be used in like sushi, soup, stew, or other supplements, and it's got a lot of vitamins and nutrients, good source of vitamins and minerals, etc. And it's increasingly popular ingredient, in dishes or cuisines all over the world. And I had a lot of Japanese friends when I was studying abroad, and back then, what people from different countries liked whenever I gave them was the seaweed. No failure, 100%. They always liked it, 100%. So if you like to give this them as present, go for it. No failure, I guarantee it. And from what I know, seaweed these days enjoys a high global demand thanks to international travel and influence of Korean culture and so on. So I know COVID is going around these days, but then the popularity of the seaweed Kim never stops. So I'm going to show you this. Okay, let me try this and I'll show you how I eat it. It's pretty simple though. You might as well know you can eat this with rice, or this can be eaten with something else, as side dishes, like I said earlier. That's pretty simple. There's no method of eating this. You just eat it. Simple, right? I read an article about the danger of eating this too much, but as long as you eat this with rice or other side dishes, as far as I know, there's no harm in it. From what I've read, if you eat this too much, it's highly likely that you would consume a lot of iodine or something. But go search it if what I'm saying is true or not, because I cannot be sure about the comments that I just said. So, but what I guarantee you is this kim is really good. It's not expensive too. It's cheap. It's a bit salty, so make sure that you eat this with rice or other side dishes, okay? I'm just repeating myself, but I wanted to be clear on this. Thanks to 곱창 Kim, 광천 Kim. Go type it in Korean. It's gonna pop up on internet, and it'll be easy for you to buy it through internet, right? Okay. Go try it. Oh, yeah, it looks kind of like this. Simple. And tonight, okay, let me explain to you what happened on last Friday. Last Friday, I read a book called The Most Dangerous Game. It was a horror story. Uh, the main character was in an island uh, where he thought nobody lived, but then he found out that somebody was living there. And there he had a game with the guy who already was living in that island, and pretty much like they were like one on one, like haunting. Um, at the end of the story, from what I understand, the main character won, but then the story abruptly ended, so it embarrassed me a bit. But since it's a story from a long time ago, mm, it was it was okay though. It was okay. Mm. But personally, I would not recommend you to read it. It was a short story, and the story kind of abruptly ended, so I felt it was not organized. Should I say? Yeah. But this time, I'm going to read a book called hmm, The Mysterious Island. If you look at it closely, oh, come on, yo. Yes, The Mysterious Island. Written by Jules Verne. And here it says below, time left in book is 2 hours and 21 minutes. So it's a long story, right? Compared to the one that I read on Friday. Wow, see, it was published in the year 1874. So fiction, action, adventure, science fiction. I'm excited to read this. Mm, for sure. And a little explanation about the author. This author was a French author who pioneered the science fiction genre, and he passed away in 1905. So about a decade ago. And here he says he's best known for novels such as Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So what I can find that he's a novelist, true novelist. He wrote a lot of novel about space, air, and underwater travel, mm, that kind of stuff. Oh, there's interesting facts about him. He says some of his books have been made into films. So if I look into Google or some other search engine, then I'll be able to find the film. Hmm. Oh, wow. He's even referred to as the father of science fiction, and its source is Wikipedia. Anyway, okay, from today, I'm going to read this book till the end, and I'll see how the story goes. So for tonight, I'm going to read this for 20 minutes. Are we rising again? No, on the contrary. Are we descending? Worse than that, Captain. We're falling. For heaven's sake, have out the ballast. There, the last seg is empty. Does the balloon rise? No, I hear a noise like the dashing of waves. The sea is below the car. It cannot be more than 500 feet from us. Overboard with every weight, everything. Such were loud and startling words which resounded through the air. Above the vast watery desert of the Pacific about 4 o'clock in the evening of the 23rd of March, 1865. Few can possibly have forgotten the terrible storm from the northeast in the middle of the equinox of that year. The tempest raged without intermission from the 18th to the 26th of March. Its ravages were terrible in America, Europe, and Asia, covering a distance of 1,800 miles and extending obliquely to the equator from the 35th north parallel to the 40th south parallel. Towns were overthrown, forests uprooted, coasts devastated by the mountains of water which were precipitated on them, vessels cast on the shore, which the published accounts numbered by hundreds, whole districts leveled by waterspouts which destroyed everything. They passed over. Several thousand people crossed the land or drowned the sea. Such were the traces of its fury left by this devastating tempest. It surpassed in disasters those which so frightfully ravaged Havana and Guadeloupe, one on the 25th of October 1810, the other on the 26th of July 1825. But while so many catastrophes were taking place on land and at sea, a drama not less exciting were being enacted in the agitated air. In fact, a balloon, as a ball might be carried on the summit of a waterspout, had been taken into the circling movement of a column of air and had traversed space at the rate of 90 miles an hour, turning round and round as if seized by some aerial maelstrom. Beneath the lower point of the balloon swung a car containing 5 passengers, scarcely visible in the midst of the thick vapor mingled with spray which hung over the surface of the ocean. Whence, it may be asked, had come that plaything of the tempest? From what part of the world did it rise? It surely could not have started during the storm, but the storm had ravaged 5 days already, and the first symptoms were manifested on the 18th. It cannot be doubted that the balloon came from a great distance, for it could not have traveled less than 2,000 miles in 24 hours. At any rate, the passengers, destitute of all marsh for their guidance, could not have possessed the means of reckoning the route traversed since their departure. It was a remarkable fact that although in the very midst of the furious tempest, they did not suffer from it. They were thrown about and whirled round and round without feeling the rotation in the slightest degree, or being sensible that they were removed from a horizontal position. Their eyes could not pierce through the thick mist which had gathered beneath the car. Dark vapor was all round them. Such was the density of the atmosphere that they could not be certain whether it was day or night. No reflection of light, no sound from inhabited land, no roaring of the ocean could have reached them through the obscurity while suspended in those elevated zones. Their rapid descent alone had informed them of the dangers which they ran from the waves. However, the balloon, lightened of heavy articles such as ammunition, arms, and provisions, had risen to the higher levels of the atmosphere to a height of 4,500 feet. The voyagers, after having discovered that the sea extended beneath them, and thinking the dangers above less dreadful than those below, did not hesitate to throw overboard even their most useful articles, while they endeavored to loose no more of that fluid, the life of their enterprise, which sustained them above the abyss. The night passed in the midst of alarms which would have been death to less energetic souls. Wow. The expression, wow, right? Again, the day appeared, and with it the tempest began to moderate. From the beginning of that day, the 24th of March, it showed symptoms of abating. At dawn, some of the lighter clouds had risen into the more lofty regions of the air. In a few hours, the wind had changed from a hurricane to a fresh breeze. That is to say, the rate of the transit of the atmospheric layers was diminished by half. It was still what sailors call a close drift, topsail breeze, but the commotion in the elements had nonetheless considerably diminished. Towards 11 o'clock, the lower region of the air was sensibly clearer. The atmosphere threw off that chilly dampness which is felt after the passage of a grey meteor. The storm did not seem to have gone farther to the west. It appeared to have exhausted itself. Could it have passed away in electric shifts, as is sometimes the case with regard to the typhoons of the Indian Ocean? But at the same time, it was also evident that the balloon was again slowly descending with a regular movement. It appeared as if it were little by little collapsing, and that its case was lengthening and extending, passing from a spherical to an oval form. Towards midday, the balloon was hovering above the sea at a height of only 2,000 feet. It contained 50,000 cubic feet of gas, and thanks to its capacity, it could maintain itself a long time in the air, although it should reach a great altitude or might be thrown into horizontal position. Perceiving their danger, the passengers cast away the last articles which still weighed down the car, the few provisions they had kept, everything, even to their pocket knives, and one of them, having hoisted himself onto the circles which united the cords of the net, tried to secure more firmly the lower point of the balloon. It was, however, evident to the voyagers that the gas was failing and that the balloon could no longer be sustained in the higher regions. They must infallibly perish. There was not a continent nor even an island visible beneath them. The watery expanse did not present a single speck of land, not a solid surface upon which their anchor could hold. It was the open sea, whose waves were still dashing with tremendous violence. It was the ocean, without any visible limits, even for those whose gaze, from their commanding position, extended over a radius of 40 miles. The vast liquid plain, lashed without mercy by the storm, appeared as if covered with herds of furious chargers, whose white and disheveled crash were streaming in the wind. No land was in sight, not a solitary ship could be seen. It was necessary at any cost to arrest her downward course and to prevent the balloon from being engulfed in the waves. The voyagers directed all their energies to this urgent work, but notwithstanding their efforts, the balloon still fell and at the same time shifted with the greatest rapidity, following the direction of the wind, that is to say, from the northeast to the southwest. Frightful, indeed, was the situation of these unfortunate men. They were evidently no longer masters of the machine. All their attempts were useless. The case of the balloon collapsed more and more. the gas escaped without any possibility of retaining it. Their descent was visibly accelerated, and soon after midday, the car hung within 600 feet of the ocean. It was impossible to prevent the escape of gas, which rushed through a large rent in the silk, by listening the core of all the articles which it contained. The passengers had been able to prolong their suspension in the air for a few hours, but the inevitable catastrophe could only be retarded, and if land did not appear before night, voyagers, car, and balloon must to a certainly vanish beneath the waves. Wow, they're certainly in danger, right? Hmm. They now resorted to the only remaining expedient. They were truly dauntless men who knew how to look death in the face. Not a single murmur escaped from their lips. They were determined to struggle to the last minute, to do anything to retard their fall. The car was only a sort of willow basket, unable to float, and there was not the slightest possibility of maintaining it on the surface of the sea. 2 more hours passed, and the balloon was scarcely 400 feet above the water. At that moment, had a loud voice, the voice of a man whose hurt was inaccessible to fear, was heard. To this voice responded others not less determined. Is everything thrown out? No. Here are still $2,000 in gold. A heavy bag immediately plunged into the sea. Does the balloon rise a little, but it will not be long before it falls again. What still remains to be thrown out? Nothing. Yes, the car. Let us catch hold of the net and into the sea with the car. This was, in fact, the last and only mode of lightening the balloon. The ropes which held the car were cut, and the balloon, after its fall, mounted 2,000 feet. The first voyagers had hoisted themselves into the net. Not first, the 5 voyagers had hoisted themselves into the net and clung to the mashes, gazing at the bees. The delicate sensibility of balloons is well known. It is sufficient to throw out the lightest article to produce a difference in its vertical position. The apparatus in the air is like a balance of mathematical precision. It can be thus easily understood that when it is lightened of any considerable weight, its movement will be impetuous and sudden. So it happened on this occasion, but after being suspended for an instant aloft, the balloon began to redescend, the gas escaping by the rent which it was impossible to repair. The man had done all that man could do. No human efforts could save them now. They must trust to the mercy of him who rules the elements. At 4 o'clock, the balloon was only 500 feet above the surface of the water. A loud barking was heard. A dog accompanied the voyagers and was held pressed close to his master in the meshes of the net. Top has seen some, cried one of the men. Then immediately a loud voice shouted, land the balloon, which the wind still drove towards the southwest, has since daybreak gone a considerable distance, which might be reckoned by hundreds of miles, and a tolerably high land had in fact appeared in that direction. But this land was still 30 miles off. It would not take less than an hour to get to it, and then there was a chance of falling to leeward. An hour might not the balloon before that be emptied of all the fluid it yet retained? Such was a terrible question. The voyagers could distinctly see that solid spot which they must reach at any cost. They were ignorant of what it was whether an island or a continent, for they did not know to what part of the world the hurricane had driven them. But they must reach this land, whether inhabited or desolate, whether hospitable or not. It was evident that the balloon could no longer support itself. Several times already had the crash of the enormous billows licked the bottom of the net, making it still heavier, and the balloon only half rose, like a bird with a wounded wing. Half an hour later, the land was not more than a mile off, but the balloon, exhausted, flabby, hanging in great folds, had gas in its upper part alone. The voyagers clinging to the net were still too heavy for it, and soon, half plunged into the sea, they were beaten by the furious waves. The balloon case bulged out again, and the wind taking it drove it along like a vessel might not possibly thus reach the land. But when only 2 fathoms off, terrible cries resounded from 4 pairs of lungs at once. The balloon, which had appeared as if it would never again rise, suddenly made an unexpected bound after having been struck by a tremendous sea, as if it had been at that instant relieved of a new part of its weight. It mounted to a height of 1,500 feet, and here it met a current of wind, which, instead of taking it directly to the coast, carried it in a nearly parallel direction. At last, 2 minutes later, it approached obliquely and finally fell on a sandy beach. Wow, what a coincidence, right? Out of the reach of the waves, the voyagers, aiding each other, managed to disengage themselves from the meshes of the nets. The balloon, relieved of their weights, was taken by the wind, and like a wounded bird, which revised for an instant, disappeared into space. But the car had contained 5 passengers with a dog, and the balloon only left 4 on the shore. The missing person had evidently been swept off by the sea, which had just struck the net, and it was owing to this circumstance that the lightened balloon rose the last time and then soon after reached the land. Scarcely had the 4 castaways set foot on firm ground than they, all thinking of the absent one, simultaneously exclaimed, "Let us save him! Let us save him!" Okay, chapter 1 ended. Now it's chapter 2. So far, the story goes like this. There were passengers in balloon, and they were like far off from the land, and hurricane suddenly attacked them, and they had no choice but to go to certain island, whether that's desolate island or hospitable island or whatever that is. They should land on somewhere. And luckily, 4 people or few people um, set their feet, set their foot on the ground. It was pure luck. But then, unfortunately, some voyagers were they just fell because of storm or the sea. And now the story goes, and survivals are trying to save the people who's still in the sea. And the chapter goes on. We'll see the rest of stories tomorrow. I'm going to finish tonight, and tomorrow I'm gonna see you with more interesting story. Interesting beginning, right? Okay. Thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow. Bye.